Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. So I'll throw this out to you. So I didn't make a big deal out of it. I went to Twitter. So I was doing a show last week, and I got a call from a through the years, an exceptional source, like 10 for 10. A former player in the NFL, and he said, next 48 hours, 72 hours, keep your eye on Brandon Aiyuk. He's going to sign a deal. So I just put it on Twitter. I said, hey, keep your eyes out for Brandon Aiyuk. Not in the moment, but next 2 to 3 days. Well, nothing has transpired. So, and it's funny because I've said this before. I didn't second source it. That's why I didn't make it into a big topic. I put it on Twitter. I had one source. I tried to get a second. But it was somebody that through the years has been just tremendously accurate for me. And I don't hear from often, but he's led me in the right direction virtually every time. So I haven't talked to him yet. So I'm kind of waiting for it. But give me an update, because they do have cap space. It's fascinating for all the stars they have, because they're paying Purdy what a cashier makes at Costco. I mean, he makes nothing by NFL relative to NFL standards. Where are you on Aiyuk, their cap space, and the rumors you hear?
Well, first and foremost, Trent Williams is more pressing to me. Like,
yes,
if you had to choose
one
guy's literally not there. Not only is he not there, he's 35 years old. He's made a ton of money in his career. In the back of your mind, what if he just called and said, actually, I've done enough. We've had enough success. I know I never won a Super Bowl, but my body, I'm just kind of over. That has to terrify them. So to me, that is priority. Like, the moment Trent Williams did not show up, it went, Brandon Aiyuk, you're no longer priority number one. And he already was really emotional. Like, I don't think Trent's that emotional about this. It's like, hey, guys, we all agree I'm the best left tackle. All these guys are now getting $28, $29 million. That's what I need. It was kind of like what McCaffrey did, right, this offseason. Like, listen, I'm not going to make a big stink of this, but I'm no longer playing for $10, $11 million. I'm not asking for 40 a year, but we better get this number around 20. Thing with Aiyuk, I just think it's really complicated because he's very emotional. I give him credit for showing up. Kyle's good at this. Kyle often goes like, listen, there's a lot of stuff flying around on the outside. I know these guys really well, especially my offensive guys. I'm very close with them. I played wide receiver, so they know how much passionate I am about that position. I've been around these guys from day one. I'm the only coach they've ever had here. So in a weird way, the Niners got more shit going on than like the Cowboys. Yeah. And they're just kind of numb to it. And I think this speaks to, John Lynch. He's a pretty rare operator. And one, he's not your typical GM. He was already rich when he took the job, and he's a natural leader. But these are not easy situations. And this goes back to, Jerry rides it out, and then ultimately I'll just pay my own guy the most, whatever. Right. The Niners and Parag, Jed's money guy, who has led them, they bought a team over in Europe in soccer. They have been, the Levi Stadium changed the wealth of that family.
Yeah.
Like, Eddie DeBartolo was rich and his family was, but the Yorks were not on the same level. And they were not going to be able to sustain in Candlestick. And that thing changed everything. But they don't just hand you, this is George Steinbrenner, here's $300 million for, some star player. That's not the way. Look at last year with Nick Bosa.
Right.
They just don't operate that way. And listen, they take some shit, and rightfully so, because it goes, I understand if you're willing to, like, okay, you have a number where you're like, okay, we're just not going to get a deal done, which I don't think they do. No. So are you just, listen, I've been to going to these practices for years. Trent Williams is on a pretty cruise control training camp. Right. Like, this ain't Junction Boys, Alabama, 1950 for him. But do you want him showing up week 10 days before week one? That has pulling a hammy or something written all over it. I don't care what he's doing. He's still in pads out there moving around. And the Aiyuk thing, like, how does he can work out all he wants with the trainers and stuff in the weight room. It's just not the same. And these are two of their high, like, they're probably, the Chiefs to me are the only team that can really go Super Bowl or bust. It was a disappointment. Yeah. But I do think there's a group of 3 or 4 teams, obviously the Bills and the Ravens with Lamar and Josh, and probably the 49ers, that anything less than a Super Bowl berth feels like a devastating blow. And so to me, if you're the 49ers, like, the number's not going to come back to you. He's not just all of a sudden go like, hey, I turned $26 million. What? 3 months ago, but now more guys have gotten paid. Now I'm good with it. But I also get the Niner spot. Like, we don't think you're as good as DJ Moore. We just don't think you're
That's
that
right.
good. And that's where I have a hard time with NFL markets and stuff. Like, whatever happened to this is what we think you're worth. And you're still under contract. This is not like you're just some free agent out
Right.
there. So do you want to play on 14 million or do you want to take our $75 million guaranteed? Historically, the guy usually cracks, but it does feel, and I had Jake Rosenberg, who was a longtime contract negotiator for the Eagles on the pod last week, and he said, like, let's face it, these player empowerment in the NFL, it's not the NBA, but it's definitely amped up a little
Yeah.
bit. And you see it all around the league. These guys, like,
Well,
I'm not doing
and
shit.
it's also a lot.
That didn't happen with Parcells.
No, it's a
you
lot
know?
of wide receivers who have always been the NBA players. They're the most talented athletes. It's sort of an independent position. You break the huddle first, you go up the sideline, throw me the ball when I'm not open.
Hey, football fans, if you're looking to dominate your fantasy league next year, then we've got the channel for you. From the NFL draft through training camp and week 1 to Super Bowl Sunday, Fantasy Pros is the home of football content you cannot afford to miss. Subscribe today, and your team will be in championship form in no time.
And so the Chargers are a great example. They drafted very well. They've always done better than average on quarterbacks, like the Bengals. They were always cheap on coaches. They just didn't spend the money on coaches. I mean, you can go through it's college guy, Mike Riley, it's coordinator here. And I think Harbaugh, that's why I think Harbaugh, and I told Dean this, I said, Dean, it's like a Rubicon. You guys burst through it. You literally went to a place you'd never gone where you're going to have one of the 2 or 3 highest paid coaches. And he told me, he said, it's changed our building. He goes, there's no negative to so far. He just elevate the optimism, the wisdom. And it's interesting because I look at the Chargers and people kind of lament their wide receivers. But John, I think we talked about this. San Francisco, it was Crabtree and a bunch of guys. Michigan just won a natty with Colin Wilson. They didn't throw the ball. If you look at everywhere Harbaugh has been, I mean, you can go to Stanford, Doug Baldwin. They've never been great on the perimeter offensively. His teams have always had one shortcoming, not a great group of wide receivers. I don't think it's crazy to suggest the Chargers are going to be a top 3 seed in the AFC. I don't think it's crazy.
It shows you, though. I mean, the other day, now granted, it's not like a ACL or anything. They are pretty dependent. If Herbert were to miss a month or something, like and he's great, and I am a Jim Harbaugh loyalist. He would struggle to win games with this iteration of the roster. Maybe in a couple years, he can't win with Easton Stick. Yeah. Like you could lose the Raiders, you could lose to anybody you're playing, let alone the good teams. If Herbert is healthy, I do think they can win double-digit games. And listen, I think there are a lot of people with the Chargers over the years. We put out clips and podcasts. I've been hard on them. And they probably don't like me. And I am not anti-Charger, but like you said, you can't be taken seriously as a real organization and constantly try to hire the cheapest coach. And Anthony Lynn's a nice guy. People love the guy. He should not be your head coach. Brandon Staley, I mean, I made it very clear where I stand on that one. And even before, Mike McCoy, who had a little moment, but then it was like, you can't beat Andy Reid and these guys and Belichick with this guy. You got no shot. And part of it was they were never fishing on that part of the pier, right? They were only kind of messing over there. And whether they got lucky, regardless how this ended up happening, obviously Jim, California guy, had coached in San Diego. It worked out. I give them credit for making this and making him your head coach because it can change the franchise. But like part of this now is, and I think Andy has really got Clark Hunt, who obviously Andy and Mahomes, they've made him a lot of money over the last 6-7 years, right? Historically, he was known as a really cheap guy. And I would say the Hunt family is not Gronky or Paul Allen or just unlimited money. But now they've gotten a lot more aggressive, clearly, with paying Andy and Veach, even stuff like that. And to me, that's the next level of the Chargers of like, you can cut these checks because you can get players. You can fudge the salary cap however you want. And like you said, I wonder if we did a research project of Jim Harbaugh, the player, just thinking in my mind. I wonder if some of the good teams he was on as a player didn't feel like they were running out Randy Moss and Jerry Rice at wide receiver. So philosophically, the way he's played and coached, we know it works. And now it's on, like, there really aren't any excuses with the Chargers now. right? The knock has really been for the last 10 years. Like, look at who you're rolling out at coach. We know you can get the players. Joe Ortiz from the Ravens. It's pretty scary though, Colin. This is something I've never missed. And, in the profession you were in long before me, we have so much more control. Like I control how successful we are, how many people listen, like by my content, how consistent I do it. Like I in football, even as the head coach, guy breaks his leg in the middle of practice and he's a star player. It's like, I get you get numb to it, but you don't get numb to certain players getting injured. And that's all of a sudden he's in a boot for 2 weeks. That just rattles you. Even if it's like, oh, it's plantar fasciitis, it's not the end of the world. I can't imagine it just sent chills up with everyone in the Chargers. That like this, we have pretty high hopes this season to be competitive and be a wild card team. And just, are we sure? Because part of it, I heard Daniel Jeremiah maybe even run him a little more, play him a little like Josh Allen. And you start getting feet injuries, just freaks me out. I was going to bet a lot of money on that over under, Colin. This is one of those, guy misses, 2 weeks in a boot for this. What if it crops up again? And all of a sudden you got to miss 3 weeks in a stretch where you're playing the Chiefs, Ravens, and the Cowboys, or whatever their schedule
Right.
is, you'd be screwed.